Yvanna Cancela, welcome to
Thanks.
KTNV Action News. Let's talk a little bit about the presidential race first and your role in the presidential race and your view of the presidential race here. Why is it so close?
Well, you could probably speak better to that than I could. I know what I've seen on the ground.
What have you seen on the ground?
Well, we've seen on the ground that folks are still making decisions. You got lots of folks who are still undecided and are still kind of uncomfortable with both candidates. And then you have a lot of people who are frankly over the whole political process and are looking for this election to just be over. There's not that sense of excitement that there's been in previous cycles. And as a result, I think people aren't excited about November, aren't excited about either candidate. But when pressed, there's no question that, at least among our members and the folks that we're talking to, Donald Trump is not popular, and the last thing people want is to see him in the White House.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that. Maybe there's a lack of excitement because people really were excited, especially your members and people you hang out with, about Barack Obama, but maybe not so much Hillary Clinton. Is that a problem?
Well, I don't know that it's a problem when you have Donald Trump on the other side. It's whether or not you're excited about Hillary Clinton, you know what's at stake if Donald Trump gets to the White House. And that means that people are going to show up and vote.
I guess this issue of the working class voters, and you hang out with working class voters every day, maybe thinking that, and this goes into a little bit of negativity you're talking about, the system is rigged, they've been through some economic hard times. Why wouldn't Donald Trump's message to some extent resonate with them? Now, I know you've been in a dispute with Trump over at his place here, but why wouldn't that message resonate, even with some of your members?
Because it doesn't exist in isolation, and you can't remove his message about business or whatever it is that he's done from his racist, anti-immigrant, anti-working people rhetoric. And there's nothing in his record that shows that he's done good for or by working people, no matter what he says.
You know, it's interesting. I got a hold of this piece today. There's people who work for Donald Trump are just like you. It has quotes from folks who work at the Trump property here. What happens to us happens to America. You and others are handing this out. What's the goal?
The goal is to let people know what it's actually like to work for Donald Trump, what it's actually like to be under his leadership. And in Las Vegas, that means making $3 less an hour than your union counterparts. And it means doing everything by the book. Workers at Trump's hotel did everything by the book. The Labor Relations Board said they fair and square won the election, and he is yet to honor it. It's another example of his, frankly, lack of respect for people that work for him. And we want to make sure that people know.
But let me stop you there, because in case people don't know, you did win. You've been trying to organize there, and you did win in front of the National Labor Relations Board. But you're saying he won't honor it. What does that mean? He won't initiate negotiations? He's not allowing you to, I mean, if you won, didn't you?
Right. And what the next logical step is after a union election happens is for negotiations to start. And so what workers have said to Donald Trump is, we won, and Trump had every legal right to appeal at all sorts of different levels. At all of those levels, the appeals were found to be erroneous, and the legal step that Trump has to take is to sit down and talk to those workers
He
and
has to
negotiate
take
a contract.
And how much time does he have to do it?
Well, that's, NLRB has different regulations on that, but the reality is he should have done it the minute that the election results were in, because his workers voted, and he should honor that vote.
So how do you know he's holding off? Have you asked him to start negotiating?
Well, workers have done everything from send him letters to travel across the country to his various rallies and say, hey, we're ready to negotiate. We even set up a negotiation table here in Las Vegas the last time he was here at South Point, and he refused to come up and talk to the workers. We were ready. We had our attorneys, we had our leadership there, but he's yet to come to the table.
So it's in limbo then, essentially then?
Well, it's not in limbo, because workers are going to continue to put pressure and make sure that people across the country know the kind of employer that Donald Trump is.
Let's talk about the Hispanic vote. I've long talked about how the Culinary Union is the Latino Hispanic vote driver in this state. You guys are expert at getting at that vote. Trump in recent polls has almost 80% an unfavorable rating among Hispanics. We can all figure out why that is. Is that what you're hearing on the ground? And I guess the second part of that is, are those people who feel so negatively in the Hispanic community about Donald Trump, are they really going to get out to vote?
there's no question in my book that Latino turnout will be higher in 2016 than it's been in any other cycle in Nevada.
Really?
Yeah.
20%
Yes,
or more?
I'm saying it here.
You are. This is on tape, you know.
Yes, I know.
20% or more?
Yes. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. One is Donald Trump is the best organizer we've had for the Latino community. Every day that he talks about building a wall or about deporting 11 million people, he reminds folks why voting is important. Second is the level of infrastructure and investment in not only engaging but turning out the Latino community is bigger than it's been any cycle since I've been here. And third is that I truly believe that people are going to take action that they may not have done in previous cycles. And that means voting, that means volunteering, that means making sure that everyone in their household shows up and vote. Maybe in the past only the dad in the house voted. This time he's gonna make sure that his kids, wife, brother, sister, whoever else is in the home votes. And I really don't see a scenario in which those folks don't show up in big numbers.
Will they vote in those big numbers in the presidential race and the U.S. Senate race? Because there's a poll that just came out today in the Washington Post that showed Catherine Cortez Masto and Hillary Clinton both strong among Hispanics, but she is running 12 points behind Hillary Clinton among Hispanics. Catherine Cortez Masto will be the first Latina ever elected to the U.S. Senate, only has 58% of the Hispanic vote right now. 38% of Hispanics in that poll said they don't know who she is. Are you worried, as someone who organizes for election and is involved, that there's going to be some kind of drop-off between the presidential race and the U.S. Senate race? And does Catherine Cortez Masto have a lot of work to do?
Well, I think historically we've seen that the drop-off is real. I think Shelley Berkeley would talk about what the drop-off is like and how it affected her race.
She lost by 12,000 votes, in case people have forgotten. Is that the Culinary Union's fault? Is that what you're saying?
No, of course not.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that the drop-off is a real thing. There are lots of folks who go in to check off the presidential and finish their voting there. It is on groups like us, like the Culinary, to educate folks about the importance of voting all the way down, not just through the Senate, but all the way through the ballot initiatives to the bottom of the ballot. And that's going to take a lot of education. There's no question that the Senate race is close, but I think that Catherine and her team are running a solid campaign and that folks are going to do everything they can to make sure that a race that is undoubtedly going to be close ends up in her favor.
Don't you think there's some, I'm playing devil's advocate here based on these numbers. She was a two-term attorney general, but she wasn't the kind of attorney general who went out and did a lot of political activities, probably didn't show up at the union very often to do meet and greets, those kinds of things. Does she still have work to do among the basic Democratic constituencies that maybe someone who was rising through Congress and running for the U.S. Senate, even a local government or the legislature? Is that a fact?
Yeah, sure, she has work to do to get her name out there, but so does Joe Hack. If you look at the same poll, the Washington Post poll has him at 41% amongst Hispanics not knowing who he is. And so we live in this political bubble where we're in the details, but the reality is it takes a while for the campaigning to penetrate within different communities. And when you start explaining the difference between Joe Hack and Catherine and the fact that Joe Hack is going to be Donald Trump's right-hand man in Nevada, people make a decision that frankly favors Catherine.
Oh, come on, that's facile, though. Donald Trump's right-hand man in Nevada. Joe Hack has actually run pretty well among Hispanics, if you look at exit polling, in his congressional races.
That was before he endorsed Donald Trump.
And so do you think that actually people are making that connection?
Absolutely.
That there's a coattail effect or reverse coattail effect there?
Absolutely,
Seriously.
as there should be. How can you embrace Donald Trump and not be married to his policies? You cannot say that you support that man for president and not say that you stand against what he stands for.
Joe Hack has said he's for a path to citizenship. You know that.
He has not said he's for a path to citizenship. He played snake. He was very snaky during the immigration debate. And
snaky?
Made it a point, yes.
Really?
And made it a point to, at one point, say that he was for a DREAM Act, but only if it had certain provisions, and never came forward on a path to citizenship, would not sign on to supporting the bill that would have come out of the Senate. It's easy to say that he, quote unquote, did the right thing, but he took votes to defund DAPA and DACA programs and has even come as far as supporting Donald Trump. I mean, you cannot separate that from him.
But your members, for instance, who you're closest to and you could get a sense of, they don't really feel negatively about Joe Hack because they're normal people. They're not like you and me. They don't follow all the nuances of Joe Hack's votes, et cetera. Or have you been educating them on this so they know this? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, there's no real antipathy among your members toward Joe Heck. I can see it toward Donald Trump, but not toward Joe Heck, are they?
Well, I don't think that you have to feel antipathy to know that the Democrat is a better choice, right? That Democrats have historically stood on the right side of immigration reform. They support unions. They support a better economy than what Republicans have done over the last decade.
So it's just pure partisanship
and so,
on
no,
your
it's
part.
not necessarily pure partisanship.
It is, though.
Well, in this case, the partisanship actually reflects the policy. And what Joe Heck has done is not take tough positions that would benefit our members. And Catherine has made it a point not only to come out and say that she would support a pathway to citizenship, but to show that she's going to stand up for people like our members.
So all she has to do is say it, even though she doesn't have a record on it? All she has to do is say it because she has D after her name? That's all you need? If she says the right things?
Well, it's not about just saying the right things. It's about then doing them in Washington.
What makes you think she will, though? She doesn't have a record?
Well, she does have a record. She has a record of standing up to big banks, making sure that people all over Nevada got the money that they deserved after being decimated by the housing crisis. And as Attorney General, she made it a point to make all sorts of programs accessible to people like our members, whether they related to housing or on a number of different issues. And so I believe that she will be that kind of politician in D.C. Unfortunately, Joe Heck has said a lot of things and has acted in opposite fashion. He said that he supports immigrants, but then votes to defund DAPA and DACA and supports Donald Trump. The choice is easy.
Well, you got that one down. Let me ask you about the Congressional District 4, which is the race you were very involved in the primary. And the Culinary Union, in my opinion, single-handedly helped Ruben Key win that race in a landslide. It's a very Democratic district. I think the Culinary Union maybe felt some responsibility for the loss of that seat. Stephen Horsford was one of your own. It was a very tough race for a lot of Democratic constituencies. So now Ruben Key has won that. It's a double-digit Democratic lead. You just coast now, right? There's not much more to do?
Oh, no way. Absolutely not. And for anyone to think that would be a mistake. Just this week, the NRCC went up with a big ad against Ruben.
That's a National Republican Congressional Committee, again, for normal people, not like us.
Right. And the numbers in that district certainly favor a Democrat, but what 2014 taught us was that if enough Democrats stay home, a Republican can win.
That's not a presidential year, though. I mean, you would really have to be guilty of malpractice to blow this general election, wouldn't you?
But that doesn't,
I don't mean you personally. But,
right, no, I get that, but that doesn't mean that we can take anything for granted, and it would be crazy to have won the primary and then lose a general. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that Ruben is a congressman come January.
All right, I have a few minutes left. I want to talk to you about another issue that the union's gotten involved in and that we're very interested in here, and so is this entire city. That's the stadium. You've been at some of those meetings. The Culinary's actually publicly testified against publicly funding that stadium for the Raiders and or UNLV, and you've testified in favor of the Convention Authority expansion. This really has nothing to do with principle, though, does it, Yvanna Cancela? I mean, this is all about the fact that Sheldon Adelson is an anti-union guy. If this had been proposed by Caesars or MGM, you guys would be out there being the biggest cheerleaders the way that the laborers are out there at every meeting. This is purely because Sheldon Adelson is an anti-union guy, is it not?
Oh, please. That would be a very easy story to write, and that's not the case. We have
it's called the truth, isn't it?
It is not the truth. We have a long history of being against public funding for projects like stadiums, and it dates back to...
If they're done by anti-union people.
It's not about being anti-union or pro-union. It's about the idea that public money that should be used in an economy that severely underfunds education, safety, and a number of other projects, should not prioritize that money for something like a stadium that could be privately built. And that's how we felt about the proposed soccer stadium in the city of Las Vegas, and it's certainly how we feel about the proposed stadium on the Strip. And it's why we've said that that money should be prioritized to the convention center expansion, which is a true community asset and generates billions of dollars in revenue for the state.
You don't think a stadium could do that? I mean, the folks who support the stadium say, why do people say it's okay to spend all this money, which is also, not all of it, by the way, for this is room tax money for the convention authority expansion, but why spend hundreds of millions on that when you can do this dramatic, game-changing thing for Las Vegas, build a professional sports stadium, get an NFL team here? Why do you hate football?
I love football.
Okay.
I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm a painful.
I'm so sorry. I don't want to talk about that.
The problem is that the variables to success for the stadium are so many that we take such a big risk, and we don't put a corporation at risk, we put county taxpayers at risk.
What's the real risk, though? It's room tax money. What could really happen? What could go wrong?
Well, the risk is that the bonds go under, that they don't make the projected revenue they think they're going to make.
That's unlikely, though, right?
Who knows? I don't know if there are 40 stadium tours that could come through Las Vegas. I don't even know if there are 40 artists out there that could sell out a
You mean, you're talking about now the events they would have to get outside of the football games to make the thing work.
Right. Well, yeah, assuming they even get a football team. The second step is then filling that stadium on multiple occasions throughout the year. Maybe that happens, maybe that doesn't. But in the event that it doesn't, who's on the line is not Sheldon or the Majestic, the development company, it's taxpayers. And that's a really risky position to put people in and to put a budget in that isn't always at its best, that has shown that it suffers when the economy here suffers. And it's not as if our economy is completely back to where it was in pre-recession times. We're still getting back on our feet.
How far do you take this? And what I mean by that is people assume, and I assume there will be a special session, whether it's before the election or after the election. That's really the only wild card here. And maybe it'll fall apart. But do you go up there and lobby for the convention center expansion and against the stadium? Do you?
Well, I think we certainly lobby for the convention center expansion, and I think we'd like to see a discussion with a lot more transparency for the public about where this money comes from, who's really on the line.
You know where it's coming from. How come you're equivocating now? Why would you not lobby against the publicly funded stadium? If this goes through the way it's drawn up now, why wouldn't you lobby against it?
I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm saying that our lobbying would not just be vote no. Our lobbying would be think about what else this money could be spent on, who's really on the line, and are you actually speaking to your constituents about this? Because as of now, the project has had very little public dialogue or transparency.
It's been like 6 of these stadium meetings, haven't there?
6 of these stadium meetings that happen in the middle of the day where there are barely enough seats for the lobbyists who attend the meetings. To say that those are public is a joke.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Really.
Most meetings take place during the day.
Yes, meetings take place during the day, but when they are meetings looking for public input, they generally take place in the evening, as is proof by the school district reorganization meetings. You have to meet people where they're at, and that has not happened with this project.
So you're committing to lobby for the convention authority expansion, but you don't know what you're going to do on the stadium depending on what comes out of the committee, is that right?
Well, I think that we're committed to forcing a conversation about whether or not this is the best use of this money. And based on our history, I believe that we'll be on the side of saying that public money for this project is not the best idea.
All right. Yvanna Cancela, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right.